Hey, what is going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. In today's review, we are going to be taking a look at the Vokyl Erupt. Now, the Vokyl Erupt was a Indiegogo project done by a couple of guys that are involved with JDS Labs, which are known for their amps and DACs, but this is their attempt at making a quote-unquote audiophile gaming headphone or headset. Because this thing is a gaming headset, it does include a microphone, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is their attempt at that. Their goal was to make a universal headset that could be used on both PC and console, that also would have a sound worthy of the quote-unquote audiophile great experience. So the Erupt here is quite the interesting product. A little quick overview of it. So this launched, I believe, in September of 2018 is when I joined the Kickstarter for it. I believe I paid $225 plus shipping for it for like an early backer price. And the final retail price on them is $399 or $400. They said back in September that they were going to deliver in March of 2019, but that got quite delayed, and I received these like mid to late September of 2019, not quite March, so about 6 months late. But anyway, let's get things going here with some specs on the Erupt, and then we will get into the sound and a few other features. So the Vokyl Erupt is a $400 headphone using a 50 millimeter aluminum magnesium driver with an impedance of 80 ohms, and they are semi-open with a weight of 406 grams. So those are the basic specs of the Erupt. So moving on into the build. So the Erupt feels really well built for the most part. The cups are completely metal yokes. These are like all these pieces are CNC'd out of like solid blocks of aluminum, which is an incredibly inefficient way to produce something. They have videos of them making these, and they're just taking solid blocks of aluminum and CNCing out all these parts, which is not really how you're supposed to do that, because like it wastes a lot of other material. But that is how they were doing this. So all this is all CNC'd. Also of note, there are two colors. There are blue and orange colors to choose from. This particular one is the orange. And originally they had this speckle pattern like as an option, and then apparently people complained, and they had like the thing where you could opt if you wanted the speckle or not, both on the blue and the orange color. I opted for it because I actually like the speckle design on it. But looking at their website now, I believe they ditched the speckle pattern for final release. So if you didn't get a pair on the Indiegogo, I don't believe you can still get the speckle pattern, but maybe contact them if you really want the pattern. They might give it to you. Other things with the build, this is using like kind of like that AKG style headband with like the bridges up top, which, you know, these are covered in rubber, which I've never seen before. The AKG ones are plastic, and this is rubber that you can kind of move around. And the head strap surprisingly is like rigid, like it does not really flex, and it's hard. And I've never seen a rigid comfort strap on a headphone. Like, never one really this rigid. I guess the only other one I can think of would be the Mass Drop Fostex TXO, the like T50 mod that they do, had like a really crappy rigid comfort strap, but this one is rigid with just like a little tiny bit of padding underneath on the bottom, so that is quite interesting. You also get two sets of pads that I think this is protein leather. I don't think this is real leather. It kind of has like a Vokyl thing inside. This is the soundstage pad, which is perforated. We also have the bass pad, which has a perforated inside, but not perforated on the top and the outside. And then taking the pad off, Underneath, you have the whatever aluminum, magnesium, whatever alloy driver, which is angled and actually sits in front of you. So this is the headphone sitting correctly. This is the right side. This is the left side. So the driver sits in front and angles towards you. So that is the build here on the Vokyl Erupt. So moving on into comfort. So the Erupt sadly is not that comfortable for me, mostly due to this strap. As I mentioned, it is rigid and hard, and it hurts the top of my head. It doesn't have enough padding underneath here. It's very thin padding, and it's so hard. I mean, just this hard, rigid strap that hurts the top of my head. So that gets to me after like an hour of wear. So that's not good in my book. The pads are okay. They're not the deepest pads in the world. A little oval, wherever it is compared to like two of my fingers. Not the biggest opening, not super deep, but they're pretty soft and they work for me. But if you have larger ears, I could see that being an issue. So comfort on this is going to be sort of a mixed bag. Now for power, they are not really hard to drive. They're pretty easy to drive, which is obviously their goal. If you want to be usable on console and stuff, you have to be pretty efficient. They're not like absurdly easy to drive, but I mean, they're still really easy to drive. I mean, you shouldn't have any problem powering them off of a phone or a PS4 controller or something like that. So now into accessories. So they come in this case, which is Vokyl. You get a carabiner, a little information card. You get the headphones. You get the bass pads, as well as the soundstage pads, which come on by default. You get one cable that does not have a microphone. And also of note, both cables have this like volume controller, which is an inline volume wheel, which I hate these. You should never do an inline volume wheel because these start messing with things when they start getting worn out and dirty. And I thought this was a mute switch, would just like mute the headphone, but it doesn't seem to do anything. And I thought maybe on the microphone cable, this muted the microphone. But the microphone has its own mute switch on the actual microphone, so I'm not sure what this is for. It doesn't do anything. I don't know if it's broken. And then here you get the cable with the microphone, which is, both these cables are very stiff and janky. I don't really like either of the cables for this headphone. As you can see, it's just a pain. So there's the mic cable. So wherever you take the headphone and you plug in the mic like so. If I can get it in, there it goes. Plug in the left side. There we go. And now you have yourself a gaming headset. Ooh. So that's the point of the Erupt here, is to be a gaming headset. So those are the accessories that you get here with the Vokyl Erupt. Okay, so now we are going to do a microphone test. I actually have not used the microphone yet, so you're going to get my live reaction to the microphone, and we'll see how it sounds compared to, I guess, my microphone now. So I'll see you in a bit for that. Okay, so here we are testing the Vokyl Erupt's microphone. Definitely not a huge fan of how this sounds. Sounds pretty empty and distant and kind of nasally. Definitely behind the mic on the Sennheiser PC37X, which I think is actually probably a better headphone than this, which you'll see in just a little bit. But definitely way behind desktop microphones, and definitely way behind my normal review mic, which is the Lewitt LCT 440 Pure. But anyway, back on into the review. Okay, so moving on into the sound segment of the Vokyl Erupt. So as I mentioned earlier, the Erupt was shooting for a quote-unquote audiophile grade gaming headset. So we are going to talk about FR, and there are two pad options for this, so we're going to have to go over FR twice, but I'm going to try to keep this a little quicker and a little more concise for sake of time, because I trying not to make this a half-hour video, but it might end up being that way. So we're going to start off with the soundstage pads, which are the default pads, the perforated ones that come on this headphone by default. So the soundstage pads, you get decent bass extension actually. They has maybe about 5 dB roll off from about 20 to 100 hertz. After that, there is quite the recession in the mids. I don't think it's quite as bad as what the ears graph shows, but it seems to be like 12-ish dB, 10, like it's past 10 to 12 dB of recession in your mids, starting after about 1K, so like 1 to maybe like 5-ish, 6K-ish. There's just this massive hollow, just emptiness canyon of no mids. And then there's just this insane sharp treble peak, like 9-10K treble peak that just comes back, and it's just like, ouch. Listening to these, like doing my final listening test, I listened to them for maybe a little over an hour straight, and by the end of that, my ears were hurting. That treble peak is like, ouch. So decently flat bass, a little bit of roll off, but just mid canyon with sharp treble peak, which is just ouch. Not the absolute worst FR I've ever seen, but not great. Not a very good FR with the soundstage pads. Moving on to the bass pads, these things are an absolute abomination with the bass pads. I've seen an impression of these that said that they sounded like the Philips Fidelio X2s. And with these bass pads, yeah, they really do sound a lot like the X2s. So with the bass pads, these just get like a 20 dB bass shelf from like 200 hertz on. They still have that same 5 dB of roll off below 100, but it just shelves everything up like 20 dB. The mids stay close to the same as with the soundstage pads, still with a 10K peak, but just slightly lower, just a little less treble, a little darker with the bass pads, but just an insane bass shelf, just disgustingly warm, nasty bass shelf with more of a mid canyon and just another treble pick. Once again, I don't think the ears graph is quite accurate. I think that's a little more extreme than how it like actually sounds, but I mean, the bass at some points is like 20-25 plus dB higher than where the mids are, which is like, ew. So yeah, these pads are just throw those away. So even with the soundstage pads, not great FR, pretty bad FR in my opinion. Moving on to other things. So detail wise, honestly not great. They have a decent amount of grain. Now they're not as grainy as like an X2 or a Ship 9500 or a K7XX, but grainier than like an HD6XX or 600, grainier than that. They have a noticeable amount of grain in the treble and the mids. So detail wise, not very good in that department. Also, dynamics are not very good either. I was actually kind of surprised. Such a large driver, I thought they could get a decent amount of slam, but nope. Pretty poor dynamics in my opinion, especially for a $400 price point. Also for this price point, I mean, the X100s easily outslam them. So dynamics are relatively poor. Soundstage is actually pretty wide. Now, I think the reason why that is I think what they did was they recessed the mids so much with both pads to try and create this sense of emptiness that fakes a sense of stage. Now, I think outside of that, they do also still have a decently wide stage, but that like hollowness of no mids gives like this sense of like emptiness and space, kind of like you're in like a hollow, echoey room. So I think that's why they recessed the mids so much, but it just ends up making them sound really gross. So that is what you get with the stage on the Erupt. Imaging is actually decent. I was surprised how well they imaged. It's not like the greatest imaging I've ever heard, but surprisingly decent and competent. Timbre, definitely metallic sounding. And it seems like whenever you coat a driver with metal, it ends up sounding metallic, which I guess kind of makes sense. So definitely metallic timbre, not the most natural timbre here on the Erupt. So overall, I really do not like how the Erupt sounds. It just sounds really empty, really bloated, grainy, sharp treble peak. It's just gross sounding in my opinion. I just really dislike how this headphone sounds. For $400, if we're comparing to non-gaming headphones, I mean, just oh no, I mean HD 660S or 6XX easily over these. If you want wide soundstage, AKG K712, much better than this. I mean, so here's the thing. I'm not a huge believer in like you need a gaming headphone for gaming. I mean, you really can game in anything. I mean, you see pro players playing crappy, HyperX Clouds, Razer Krakens. I mean, Apple earbuds you see pro players use. You really don't need special headphones for gaming. So for $400, you can get a real audiophile headphone. Sundara, the new Audeze LCD1, when that comes out. Like I said, 660S, and there's lots of stuff. You can, IVA on Massdrop is $500 now. I mean, there's actual good headphones you can get for this kind of money that don't make that crazy sacrifice in FR. Now, also for $400, also a gaming headset, a real gaming headset, is the Audeze Mobius. And I will be trying to review this the day after this review of the Erupt comes out. No promises, but that's what I'm shooting for. Now this is quite different because this is fully closed back. It has wireless capability, head tracking. It's planar, but this sounds tremendously better and more natural than the Erupt does. And if you were going to spend $400 on one of them, now not saying I would spend $400 on this either. Spoiler alert for this review: don't pay $400 for an Audeze Mobius. But if you were going to spend $400 on one of them for an audiophile gaming headset, I would pick the Mobius all day over the Erupt. The Erupt is just not a good sounding headphone at all, in my opinion. These pads are just meh, and the bass pads are just a complete abomination. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of the Vokyl Erupt. I like how it looks, and I like the feel of it, but it just sounds not very good. And like I said, just get real audiophile headphones and get a Samsung Go or something. Just get some kind of desktop mic. Or if you have to have a gaming headset, Audeze Mobius review that coming soon, and you can see my complete thoughts on this thing. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you want to buy these for some reason, links of where to do that in the description, as well as my Twitter, my contact email, both of the ears graphs for these, and all other relevant information. We got some big reviews coming up pretty soon. Hyphem and Aria and Focal Stelia. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but some of the B-roll in this video was done on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. I got to borrow one of those for a night, so you will be seeing some B-roll from that camera in a couple of my upcoming reviews, so look forward to that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.